Chair opening statement, then what I propose we'll do is do a wee introduction around the room, because I'm conscious there's a lot of faces, particularly online, that we will be familiar with. Okay, so this meeting has been held remotely and will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcast available through the Council's website. The IGB is a joint data controller with Inverclyde Council and NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde under the General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act 2018. This meeting will be broadcast and recorded to fill a public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during this remote meeting will be retained in accordance with Council public policies available through the Council's website. Members of the IGB are reminded that they should follow the IGB's established meeting protocol, including around the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received invites to the meeting. So I'll be asking questions later. I'll just start, I'll introduce myself and then I'll go clockwise around the table. I am David Gould, I am the chair of the IGB and vice chair of the Health Board.
I am Kate Rocks, and I'm the Chief Officer for the Health and Social Care Partnership.
Veteran Jonathan Hines, Chief Social Work Officer.
Hi there, I'm Craig Given, Chief Finance Officer.
Afternoon, Maxine Ward, Head of Service.
Hi, Alan Bess, Head of Health and Community Care.
Hi, Laura Moore, Chief Nurse.
Afternoon, Margaret McIntyre, Head of Children and Justice Services.
Hi, I'm Arlene Bailey, I'm Service Manager for Contacts Commission and Organisational Development.
Hi, I'm Scott Brown, I'm the Service Manager for Planning and Performance.
Hi, I'm Kirsty Ripley, I'm Southside for NHS.
I am Councillor Ron and I'm employed here on Inverclyde Treasury.
Hi, I'm Heather Davies and I'm a carer representative.
Hi, I'm Francesca Brennan, like Councillor Moran, I'm an appointee of the Council and I'm Vice Chair of the IGB, which means I get to chair meetings when David is called overseas.
Hi, my name is Stephen McLaughlin. I'm the Customer Service Director of Inverclyde Homes and I represent all of the Inverclyde Housing Associations.
Hi, I'm Charmaine Elliott, Chief Executive of CBS Inverclyde, representing the third sector.
I'm Lindsay Harry, Committee Officer.
Hi, I'm Anne Sinclair, and I'm standing as Cable Advisor to the committee today.
Thank you, colleagues. And online, I shall start, and hopefully everyone's listening. I'll start with Colin McDonald.
Hi, my name's Colin McDonald. I'm a committee officer.
Thanks, Colin. Karen McVeigh.
Yes, I'm Karen McVeigh. I'm Members and Committee Services Team Leader.
Councillor Lynn Quinn.
Hi, I'm Lynn Quinn, one of the councillors for Inverclyde Council.
Ketky Miles.
Hello, I'm Ketky Miles. I'm a non-executive health board member. I'm substituting for Paul Ryan today, who is the permanent member.
Thanks, Ketky. Becky.
Hi, I'm Becky Metcalf, non-executive health board member.
Brian Old.
Good afternoon, Brian Old. I'm a non-executive healthcare member and also the whistleblowing champion for NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde.
Thanks, Brian. Giovanni.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Gio D'Alessio and I'm a non-executive with the health board member.
Kim.
Hi, Kim Donald. I'm the board secretary and I'm here for the whistleblowing update with Brian. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Katrina.
I couldn't get my mic off. I'm Phillips, I'm Head of Mental Health in HSCP.
Thanks, Katrina. Susan. Okay, and then Helen.
Hi, I'm Helen McGurk. I'm the Interim Finance Manager for Health.
Thank you, Helen. Right, thank you all. There's a reason I don't sit in the chair because it's too big for my bottle, quite frankly. Thank you very much. Okay, if we can start then with item number 1, apologies, substitutions and declaration of interest. Paul, do we have any apologies, substitutions or declarations when it comes to this?
We have apologies from Councillor Reynolds and Dr. Paul Ryan of Ketky Miles substituting. There will be a roll call for us for declaration of interest. The following members please indicate if they are present and anything either in person or remotely. David Gould.
In person.
Councillor Brennan.
Present in person.
Councillor Moran.
In the chamber.
Councillor Quinn.
Present remotely.
Dr Metcalfe.
Present remotely.
Giovanni D'Alessio.
Present remotely.
Kiki Miles.
Present remotely.
Kate Rocks.
Present in the chamber.
Jonathan Hines.
Present in the chamber.
Craig Given.
Present in the chamber.
Dr McDonald. Laura Moore.
In person.
Dr Chris Jones. Gemma Eardley. Kirsty Reichel.
Present in the chamber.
Gavin Elliott.
Present in the chamber.
Donald McQuaid. Heather Davis.
Present in chamber.
Stephen McLaughlin.
In the chamber.
Are there any declarations of interest?
Thank you for that, colleagues. Okay, if we now move on to items for action, item number 2, the minute of the meeting of Inverclyde Integration Joint Board of date September 2025. I'm just looking for any corrections, amendments, or I'm happy to accept these as accurate representation of the previous meeting. I'm not seeing that. Becky.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come in on, what page is it? Item 66, the closure of the Inverclyde Centre. The paper, it notes that it was decided that the comprehensive decommissioning and transition plan be endorsed. But I think we discussed at the last meeting, because the IGB haven't actually seen that plan, that therefore we couldn't endorse it. And we were instead going to change that to, that paper was requesting us to note that we were told about it and that it exists. Is that right? Can others confirm?
Thanks, Becky. I'll bring in Kate at this point.
So it is, I take on your point, it's actually a paper today, so that because of the request that was made to see the transition plan, so it's part of the agenda for the IGB today.
Okay. You can take that.
Okay.
Becky?
I can come in now or come in later, because the paper today to me looks to be exactly the same as the paper that we got, apart from a line to say that we get an update in January, unless there's something missing. But I mean, word for word, it's pretty much exactly the same.
Apologies, okay, so that, yeah, because that has confused me when I looked at the papers. I assumed the transition plan was there, it's just the same paper again. I don't know if Maxine wants to pick that up.
Yeah, the transition plan is really quite detailed. There's a level of significant operational detail in there. So we have taken that away to try and modify it a bit for the benefit of the board, because it's pages and pages long. The paper really today is just about saying it will come back in January with a full update, with a full transition plan included in January. Becky, you're right, when we were at the last meeting, because the appendix wasn't attached to it the last time, we did agree that you weren't endorsing the plan and that you were noting that the plan would be brought forward. So yeah, I do apologise for that.
Okay, yeah, and I remember we did have this same discussion that it's a really detailed plan, operational details that we maybe don't need to see. So I suppose then we probably need to change that, because I just don't really want it minuted that we've endorsed something that we haven't seen. So we just need to change that then.
So yeah, we agree that the change to that minute, Becky.
Thanks, Becky. I'm getting nodding from the Secretariat, so we'll make sure that happens for this thing to be approved. So subject to that revision, are we content for these minutes to be an accurate reflection of the previous meeting? I'm seeing nodding around the room. Yes, in that case, thank you for that. And now if we move on to item number 3, the non-voting membership of IGID service user representative. Kate, are you going to speak to this?
No, it's actually Anne that will be speaking to this.
Thanks, Anne.
The purpose of this report is to ask the IGIB to agree the appointment of Jackie McIntyre as the service user representative member of the IGIB for a period of 6 months. Donald McQuaid will continue to be the service user representative proxy. As set out in paragraph 3.3 of the report, The appointment will be subject to review in order to consider evolving Scottish Government guidance on supporting enhanced service user and lived experience representative participation on the IJB. Happy to take any questions.
Colleagues, any questions? In that case, are we content to accept the recommendation? MC nodding, excellent. In that case, they can pass. Thank you for that. Now, if we move on to agenda item number 4, just go through my papers, the rolling action list. Kate and Katrina, do you want to speak to this first? To see your names up first.
I think Craig's happy. Craig updated it, so thank you.
Thank you to yourself, Convener. This is our rolling action list, list that we're going to every cycle, and just highlights the main work that we're currently doing at the moment. It gives the next couple of cycles of the IJB and all the main kind of reports that we're working on and hope to bring forward in those relevant timescales. As is always the case, we're happy to take any comments, questions anyone might have.
Thank you, Craig. Colleagues, any questions or comments? I'm looking online, I'm seeing Becky.
Hello, me again. Thank you, Craig. My question was really in relation to the items that have been deleted rather than closed. So I think the first one I agree with, we discussed at the last meeting, that was an error. The second one is probably in relation to my last comment about the minute, and the third one about the progress in the voluntary redundancy trawls. It seems to be completed rather than, or deleted rather than closed, and I couldn't see it in today's agenda item in that paper. Can you just clarify that?
I'm happy to mark on that through your conveners. In terms of the update on the VER, we're going to bring forward another update in the VER on a special extraordinary IJB on the 15th of December. So we will be able to bring an update on that where we are. In terms of the VER trials that we've done, we've already spoken about that in the previous IJBs, and it's included as part of the overall financial report where it shows where we've made the savings. So I appreciate there's probably an omission on that, but the one that we bring forward on the 15th of December should cover that area.
So we can't close the action then if we haven't. So my understanding, this was the action we talked before about just a bit more detail on these posts. I think we'd said we were going to bring back a little bit of detail on which services are impacted, so we could just get some assurance that there wasn't all being focused on certain services. Is that right? And is that that's going to come back in December?
Can I come in? If we know we're having a special IJB in December, Becky, and you'll see the span of where the posts are coming out from the VER trawl from there. The VER trawl is ongoing. I think it just closed last week, so we wouldn't have been able to provide that level of update for this meeting. So that's why we've asked for a special IJB.
Okay,
for that
that's absolutely fine. But then should we keep it on the rolling action list then?
It should be kept in the rolling
rather than deleting it. Thank you.
Thanks, Becky. Excellent comment, well made. Just a question for myself. There's no others round the room. Maxine, just in terms of development session and update on ADP strategy, what is your thinking in terms of timeline for this for?
Yeah, still building on that. I think there's a couple, the next IJB development session, I think there's a bit of an agenda for that one, Kate, in terms of drug-related deaths, I believe, for the next one. And then we can look at the ADP strategy at the next development session.
I think Maxine and I had a discussion, and we felt that in terms of assurance that both the IJB and certainly Councillor Brennan had highlighted that the wider elected members would want to understand a bit more about a drug deaths, because the ADB strategy is much wider than just drug deaths, it's also alcohol deaths, and we felt that we wanted to do a deep dive around what the actions we were taking to try and mitigate harm. So that will be happening with the council, and we'll take it to development session for the IJB.
Thanks, Kate and Maxine. That's something certainly I and I suspect members will very much welcome as well, being able to have that deep dive. Okay, moving on, I will not schedule.
Mr. Chair, you see a light here looking at somebody that has a curtain.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
I know you're doing it,
apologies.
Don't want to be honest with you. No, it's really just going back to the road actions. It's the range of visitors and range of facility for asylum seekers. Due to the sensitivities at the moment in time, I think this is something we should keep on it. I don't think we should do anything quite soon. I think we should be looking till after a year at least before we even consider going to visit one of these facilities. I've been down there, I haven't, so maybe I'm at an advantage. I don't think it would be a great idea for everybody to camp down there at this moment in time. And I don't mind it staying on, but I just don't think it's a good idea.
Kate, can I bring you in at this point?
Yeah, first of all, we couldn't get a date that suited anyone, so this has been going on for quite considerable amounts of months. So we'll take on board Councillor Moran's point and we'll organise something for the new year. Unless the situation would suggest otherwise, that it wasn't right to visit at this moment in time, if the IGB was happy with that.
As Chairman, I absolutely take on board Councillor Moran's points. What I will also say is that this is very much a live issue, not just within Inverclyde, but right across the whole of Scotland. And as Chair, I prefer to be in a place of informed knowledge, as opposed to not necessarily kicking cans down the road, because that's not how I want to characterise it, but I prefer, my preference would be we do this sooner rather than later because it is a live issue. And certainly from a Glasgow perspective, although on this HSCP, there are considerable challenges for the Glasgow HSCP as well in this area. It's not something we have to anywhere near the same extent down in Inverclyde, but it's something keenly aware of and something I'd like us to be fully appraised on. But take on board your comments. Councillor, thank you.
Glasgow was a lot bigger.
Okay, colleagues, and now I know how to work the light up system. Craig, do you have any points you want to make in terms of forward planning?
At this point, I don't.
Okay. In that case, colleagues, we can then move on to the presentation, Whistleblowing and Integrated Joint Board. We are joined today by my colleagues Kim Donald and Brian Auld, Board Secretary and Non-Executive Board Member Lead for Greater Glasgow and Clyde Health Board. So, colleagues, without further ado, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, colleagues, and thank you, Colin, for your last-minute sharing of the slides. I've never shared slides via WebEx before, so thank you so much for doing that for me. Thanks. If you could just move to the next slide, thank you. Thanks. So we're here today to give a high-level overview of whistleblowing, namely the importance of whistleblowing, as Brian and I are working hard to engage with colleagues wider on the process of whistleblowing and looking to encourage colleagues with a view to helping them trust the process and speak up. If you could move to the next slide, please. Thanks. Thank you. So what I propose is that I'll cover the principles of whistleblowing and the role of the board, and Brian will pick up the importance of whistleblowing, the board's obligations, and our planned next steps moving into the year ahead. Thank you. And the next slide. Thank you. So the principles of whistleblowing. This is based on the Independent National Whistleblowing Officer, or INWO for short, introducing the standards in 2021. They mirrored the standards of the complaints policy, and with a view to having stricter timeframes in place to minimise delays in people waiting for their response. So you'll see there that timely is in one of the speech bubbles, and that's one of the principles of whistleblowing. And what that has encouraged is previously the average time to respond to a whistleblower was over 300 days, but now that's reduced to between 25 and 30 days. It's still longer than the time frame of 20 working days to respond, but it's much less. And that is a national issue that the INWO are considering, because the timescale for a complicated whistleblower investigation of 20 working days is recognised that that's quite a short time frame. The other principle I wanted to draw out was accessible. Previously, whistleblowing was often buried in existing HR policies, and it would likely be 1 or 2 sentences. So it would be difficult for colleagues to find what the role of the board was around whistleblowing and how they could access the process. Now it has its own dedicated policy, so it's in the INWO standards on the INWO website and ours. And it's also part of the Ones for Scotland policies, and we have a dedicated web page to Speaking Up that covers whistleblowing and other methods that colleagues can use to speak up and get support from. And next slide, please. Thank you. And next slide again, thanks. So this is a high-level table that outlines the role of the board, and it spans from operational to strategic. I won't go through every box, but what I was trying to demonstrate here, that accountability for whistleblowing actually sits with everyone in the board. So operationally, the process sits with me and the executive management team. But it's really important to remember that all of the board has accountability to setting the tone at the top and having that process in place and feeding through a culture that allows colleagues to feel confident and able to speak up. And I'll pass over to Brian for the next few slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim, and good afternoon, everyone. If you just move on to the next slide, please, that would be great. And then the next one as well, please. Okay, so when we talk about whistleblowing in not just the NHS, but in any organisation in society as a whole, we tend to always think as it's the nuclear option. Something has gone catastrophically wrong in an organisation which has resulted in someone speaking out or speaking up about that. And the reality is whistleblowing is all about anything that might not feel right, it might not sound right, it might not look right. And every single person involved in healthcare provision across Scotland, not just in NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde, should feel that they have the ability to raise any concern. And it doesn't matter the gravity of that concern or how severe that concern. If something just doesn't feel right, they should have the ability. So for me, that's all about culture within the organisation. If you think back to where we are in terms of media reporting for whistleblowing, particularly in the NHS, again, it tends to be those really severe cases. It brings a lot of publicity to organisations, particularly at a time where it's not necessarily warranted. It adds additional pressure and takes resources away from front services. So whistleblowing is all about the culture within an organisation. How do we allow and how do we promote people to speak up if something just isn't quite right in their opinion? And when you have a conversation, it's always a two-way conversation. So it's not just about that ability to speak up, but it's also about the ability for the organisation to listen to those concerns and how do we react to those concerns. That goes hand in hand with empowerment, which is just a wee bit down there in the slide. People need to feel empowered, whether it's within their own professional groups, whether they're members of professional bodies, whether they're professionals or not. Every single member involved in the provision of care, no matter what the role is, should feel empowered to have that conversation. Again, anything that they feel is just not quite right, we would rather know about so that we can evaluate and have those discussions. And sometimes it's just about getting something off your shoulders, but other times there could be things that are quite severe and we need to take forward to formal investigation. Whistleblowing demonstrates accountability within an organisation now as a public body, a very complex public body. We are the largest in Scotland in that nature. We are accountable for the provision of services to the people that we serve across a very large geographical area. And it's only right that they should deserve the best of services that we can offer at this point in time. So we are accountable for those services. We're accountable for safe services. But as a health board, we're also accountable for ensuring that the systems, the processes, everything that we have in place to support our staff, our contractors, our volunteers, everyone who is involved in the provision of that service, we are accountable for ensuring that those systems are right, but also that they allow people to raise concerns. Kim touched on the National INWO standards. They're quite a robust set of standards. There's 10 sections to those standards. It's a hefty document if anyone is interested in reading them. But they're really, really important standards because it sets the tone for what is expected of NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde and by default of our IJBs. In terms of being transparent in our approach to whistleblowing, so we need to make sure that people know about the standards. We know about individual, but also that collective obligation and responsibility for whistleblowing, but also our approach and our response to anybody who speaks up has to be a transparent process. And those standards provide us with a framework for doing that. And the final point in this slide, which is really important, which is about that learning and improvement. So again, it's not about the catastrophic incidents that we read about in the media. It's about learning from all areas where people want to speak up from. There's always something to learn. But how do we embed that within a very large organisation? How do we ensure there's sustainable learning? And that's a challenge not only for NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde, but for all health boards in Scotland. It's the cherry on the cake. So we respond to allegations, we respond to incidents, but how do we make sure there's sustainable change there to prevent or try to prevent recurrence so much as we possibly can? If you just move on to the next slide, please. And then the next one again, please. So I've kind of touched on these in the previous couple of slides. What is our obligations under the standards? Now, the standards are compulsory standards. We don't get a choice whether we want to comply with them or not. The government are very, very clear, both in terms of legislative, but also in terms of statute, that we have to comply with these standards. So as a health board, we have to encourage and embed a speak up culture. So again, that is that system that we put in place to tell people it's okay to come to us with any concern. It's not about the formal processes on its own, it's also about those social processes. So people's ability to speak to their line management, to speak to their colleagues, to speak to a trusted friend about something that they're just worried about, something that just doesn't feel is right. And again, it comes back to our response to that. Transparency is really important for us. We've worked really hard to promote transparency, particularly through our internal processes, whether that's promoting the standards and our own internal procedures through our core briefs or through our website or even through our internal intranet as well. We take the promotion really seriously, and this year Kim and I have been working very closely with colleagues across the organisation just about exploring the standards from their own perspective, but also from service managers. How do they ensure that they are creating their own cultures for people to come forward? The final bit there is one that we do hear about in the media quite a lot, and it's about the fear of detriment. So if someone raises a concern, it's the fear that something is going to happen to them. Something negative. The standards are very clear. The legislation is very clear. If we go back to the original public interest disclosure, that if someone speaks up or raises a concern, it's in the public interest and they're doing it for the best reasons, then we have to protect them from detriment. That is very hard to do, is to break that confidence and tell people to say, if you speak up, you will not suffer a detriment. The first thing that people do is they look at media reports, they look at reports that are coming from employment tribunals, and people will say in those reports they have suffered a detriment. So there is a fear and there is a barrier, and we're working really, really hard across our staff governance, but also across our smaller groups to try and promote whistleblowing and try and relay that fear that they will suffer a detriment. If you just move on to the next slide, please. And then the final slide. So earlier this year, Kim and I and some colleagues, we undertook some work within the health board, and we identified 4 actions for us for this year with regards to the whistleblowing standards. When I took over this role just over a year ago, a huge amount of work had been done with my predecessor about the systems and processes. So for the next 4 years, we really are focusing on the cultural and the environment around whistleblowing. How do we ensure that people can speak up? They can speak up in confidence. So we've undertaken a gap analysis, and what this for us was to do is look at baseline. So how well are we performing in certain areas of the standards? Now, overall, we got a really good response to this. 75% of people felt comfortable in speaking up, but there is one area which came out for us, which is our contractors. So if you think about GPs, for example, there was a concern around GP practices and how do they raise concerns, the comfort and the confidence around that. 39% of people did state they were fearful of retaliation. So again, that goes back to my previous slide about detriment. So again, we have a bit of work as a health board and if the IGB to support that work to ensure that people don't suffer a detriment, but also they have that confidence in the system. As a consequence, they won't suffer a detriment as well. Just moving on to the next bit, the confidential contacts are really important. These are described within the standards. So these are people within the health board that we have we've identified, they have agreed to give their time, and they act as a first point of contact for people who may wish to raise a concern. And I think it's perfectly natural that not everyone would feel comfortable speaking to their line manager whilst at work. So we have independent confidential contacts that people can reach out to. They can have that first initial conversation. They can discuss the process with them. And for many people, it's just about getting the weight off their shoulders. This year, we have appointed a further 7 confidential contacts for the health board area. We have provided training and we provide ongoing support to them on a quarterly basis. Overall engagement is a huge focus for this year. So some of you are aware of our Speak Up week that we have in September, October every year, and that's about promoting whistleblowing and whistleblowing standards across the board. Em and I have met with service managers from across a number of professional groups, and that's really to look at the standards and how they apply to their own areas. And I must admit that we've been really impressed with the conversations that we've had so far. The level of engagement locally is really, really positive, but people's knowledge of the standards are really, really high. But that engagement piece now has to continue over the remainder of the action plan. And then finally, it's about increasing confidence. And I think if there's anything to take away from today, it is about increasing confidence of whistleblowing, what it is and why it's there. It's fundamentally to protect the people that we serve as an IJB and as a health board. We want to make sure that people have access to the best of services. And to do that, we have to create that culture where if something does go wrong, that people have that ability and that confidence to have that conversation with us. And that comes back to that listening exercise. So it's not as simple as just taking that leap of faith and speaking up, but it's actually how do we respond? How do we listen to our colleagues and how do we give assurance that what they're bringing to us, we will treat confidentially, we will do the work, we will investigate, and we will ensure improvements if required. I think that's our final slide, Kim. So at this point, we're quite happy enough to take any questions from the IJB.
Colleagues, any questions or comments for Brian and Kim on this? No. Oh, Kirsty.
Hiya. It's really just a comment more than anything else. What the phrase that tends to get bantered about an awful lot is needs of the service. But I think what needs to be remembered is the staff are the service. And if you don't protect the staff, you don't protect the service. I'm just curious, are you finding an increase in the use of the whistleblower policy, like between, say, in the last 12 months? Is it getting used more? Are you more people coming to you than perhaps this time last year?
Kim, do you want to come in on that one? Because you have access to the most up-to-date information on that.
Yeah, Thank you, and thank you for the question. Interestingly, nationally, the numbers coming through the whistleblowing process has decreased, and there's some work going through as to why that is. However, what we found as a board is that the contacts with our confidential contacts has increased. So people are accessing the support that's available to them to raise concerns, and perhaps feel that after discussing it with someone, they don't have to take it any further or feel able to raise it within their service. But with the actual process, the numbers have decreased in the past 12 months.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks for that, Brian. Just from my perspective, obviously, as a board member for Glasgow and Clyde, we got the benefit of seeing this at our cultural development session last Thursday. So, forearmed, I'm very much supportive of the excellent work that Brian and Kim have put into this and the whole team in terms of getting us to the point where we are. I'd very much recognise that the big challenge we continue to face is in terms of the perception of detriment. There is a real cultural issue we have with that. We need to crack that nut, because for people to operate most effectively with the best teams in any organisation, they've got to feel valued, they've got to feel listened to as well. So the ability to actually raise an issue, challenge on something they think is wrong, is absolutely crucial, and not to feel detriment to that. So absolutely, to just say, really good piece of work, and look forward to see this developing going forward as well. But thank you, Brian and Kim, for your presentation today and being here.
Thank you, David, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Sorry, I've got Robert. So I've got him this time.
Call me Peter Brady there, the miserable man. So at the end of the day, I've been at this role at 30, and purely with your whistleblowing policy, there's been a breakdown, a real breakdown, and we should really get that stage, but we do get to it. So it's a communication failure. It's a failure of the whole system. We even have this policy at all. And I would say anyway, it's been a trade union all my life, and all been in it even started union. That was a satisfaction I felt, because I could come with my colleague, and they would take my case up and they would fight my corner, and maybe I wasn't as clever and stickler as the person was saying, but they had that ability to do that. So it's important that anybody who isn't a member of a trade union has still got that same opportunity and ability to talk. And once they put the case across, there's no repercussions. And that's the big thing about it. If somebody has got a real problem, they go down the list, and it's on the list, route they want to get down. And then it's that fair end of it. At the end of the day, what's going to happen? Am I going to still be penalised if I don't win, or if I lose, or if I do win, or still? And I think it's important that people have to feel 100% sure that if they go down that route, then they'll get a good hearing, and regardless of the outcome, there will be no repercussions.
Thanks, Robert. Probably bringing Kim here, just noticed in the chat that, as she rightly points out, protection should be afforded to every single employee, irrespective of whether they are a member of a trade union or not. Also, whistleblowing is effectively the last resort, but we still need to have that policy, because unfortunately the nature of having 42,000 members of staff, employees, colleagues within the health board is a challenge. We need to reach all of them. As Brian and Kim have said, 35% don't necessarily at this point feel confident in the process. That's something we're trying to address. Brian and Kim, I'm trying not to speak for you. Do you want to come in at this point?
No, I think from my perspective, I mean, Kim and I have spoken about this for quite a long time, and I've spoken with my colleagues across NHS Scotland, and at a recent meeting with the Cabinet Secretary, that was exactly discussed as well. I think for me, one of the biggest cultural shifts we need in the NHS is actually moving away from the concept of whistleblowing, because whistleblowing is the perception, as David has just mentioned, is the nuclear option. It's the final option, where the reality is some of the issues that have been come through whistleblowing. Now, I'm talking across NHS Scotland, not across NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde solely, but some of the issues are quite significant, and you think the outcome would have been different, or the impact on patients, if it's a patient safety concern, for example, would have been different if someone spoke up earlier. And this is why we are focusing more on speaking up, because something that just doesn't look right today in a month's time could look very, very different. And if you think about the impact that has on our patients and service users, that can be quite catastrophic. So for me, there's the culture shift for me starts with what do we actually mean by speaking up and moving away from that nuclear option of whistleblowing, because it is really, really important.
Thanks, Brian. That's a really excellent point to end on. I know certainly we are not unique in the challenge of this. I know certainly if you look at what happened with NASA and the Challenger disaster, the fact there was conversations in advance and there's an awareness of a problem which ultimately resulted in the death of 7 astronauts. It's as you say, what can be a small problem now can become catastrophic a week, a month down the line. So it's a point really well made. Becky, I'll bring you in on this. That's okay.
Thank you, Chair. And sorry, this probably isn't for Brian and Kim. I suppose I'm just thinking here in the IGB and our staff who aren't employed by the Health Board. And I'm just wondering if anyone can tell me, is there a equivalent whistleblowing policy with the council? A quick Google has I found one, but it's really quite old.
Yes, it is. Okay, there's a whistleblowing policy from the council.
Thanks, Becky. Colleagues, any other questions or comments for Brian and Kim? I'm not seeing any. Can I just personally thank you for the time you've taken over this, colleagues, and just coming in today to speak to us. This is an excellent presentation. I am glad to have heard it more than once, and I'm sure I'm going to be hearing it again at Glasgow, but this is good. It's good to have this debate, this conversation, because we do need to talk about things and, as you say, engage earlier. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy. Take care.
Bye.
Colleagues, okay, we are now moving on to agenda item number 6, the annual accounts and annual report for the financial year ended 31st of March. I think that should say 2025, not 2024. Hopefully. Otherwise we're a little bit behind. Craig, I believe you're going to speak to this. You can take us through the process, what the expectation is in terms of this meeting and what we need to do.
Thank you very much, Chair. So, I'm just going to briefly say a few words, then I'm going to hand over to the team who's with us, who will go through some of the details. For people who've been on the IGB audit committee, they'll have heard this before, but the message is pretty much still the same. This is our annual accounts, and we've now completed the audit for this year. From my side, I just wanted to say a special thank you to SNT for the work on this, and a special thank you to my finance colleagues, Karen and Sam, who are with us today, and just all the work that's been done on the preparation to get us to this point. The overall report, from my side of things, I'm very happy with it, and I think it's a really good reading and a good representation of the work we do here in Inverclyde, which is SNP. But I'm going to hand over to Tamer now, who can take us through some more of the detail. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Given. I'm the Senior Manager at KPMG and here to present our report, annual audit report to the members of the IGB and the Controller of Audit for the year ended 31st March 2025. I would not go through the entire report, but skip through and happy to take any questions at the end. I would first like to draw your attention to the page 4 of our report, which notes the audit status. You will note that we have noted there that the details of ongoing matters are the receipt of the signed management representation letter and the approval of the final set of the financial statements. I would just like to reiterate that these are the points which are typically ongoing at this stage, and our work in relation to the audit is substantially complete. On page 5, we have provided a summary of our audit conclusions, which refer to the further pages down in our report, and I will be covering them in those respective pages. On page 6, we have covered our approach to materiality. I would like to confirm that there has been no change under materiality as compared to what was communicated as part of our audit strategy document. We have used a materiality of 5%, which approximately equates to 2.11% of the gross expenditure. Having said that, we do design our procedures to detect errors in a specific account at a lower level of precision than our materiality, which in this instance is £3.75 million, and we report all misstatements greater than £250,000. That would mean any individual audit difference that we have identified, if it exceeds 250,000, we tend to bring it to the notice of the audit committee and the board as part of this report. On page 7 and 8, we have provided a summary of our significant risk and the other focus areas that we had identified as part of our audit strategy document. As alluded to earlier, there has been no change in our audit strategy, and we have provided our audit conclusions in the third column of pages 7 and 8, which notes that we are substantially done with our work and we have concluded wholly positively in terms of these areas. On pages 11 to 17, we have provided our findings in relation to the wider scope and the best value, which we are required to consider as part of the code. So that includes work on the areas as it relates to financial management, financial sustainability, vision, leadership, and governance, use of resources to improve outcomes, and finally, best value. I would like to note that we have not identified any additional recommendations in relation to this as compared to what was highlighted in the previous years, and we have provided an update in relation to those points in the following pages of the report. On page 20, we have re-included our confirmation in relation to our auditor independence, and we would like to note there are no other matters that in our professional judgment bear on our independence which need to be disclosed to the IGB. On pages 22, we have made a note of the differences that were identified as part of the audit and their final conclusion. So you'll note that we have not identified any audit differences which have not been adjusted by the management. In the next section, we have included a narrative of the differences that we had identified which have been adjusted by the management. So that includes changes in the nature of internal consistency as it relates to management commentary and notes to the financial statement, and similarly some small changes in relation to the amounts disclosed in the remuneration report. But like as mentioned earlier, all of these have been adjusted and there were no quantitative differences. These were more so in the nature of narrative disclosures. On pages 24 to pages 23 to 25, we have actually provided a status update in relation to the recommendations that we had identified in the previous years. You will note that on page 25 of our report, the third recommendation has been marked as complete. And in relation to the other two, we have provided an update as provided to us by the management, which captures their status as of November 2025. That brings me to the end of the report and happy to take any questions.
Taylor, thank you so much for that. That was comprehensive, and also thank you to you and your team for getting us to this point as well. I know it's a team effort, certainly with Craig and his team as well, so very much appreciate that. So please pass that thanks from this committee on to your colleagues as well. So I'll open up. Does anyone have any questions or comments before we proceed to the substantive element of this and what we need to do? I'm not seeing any. Okay, so Craig, if you could perhaps take us through the process here. I'm conscious that we should have gone to the audit committee already today. So through the process, we asked Lynn as chair of audit committee if she and the committee have recommended that we can approve this and then go through that process.
Yep. Thank you to yourself. Yeah, the first thing is just for Councillor Quinn to come through and just confirm she's happy with the process from internal audit, and I'll come to the final part.
Lynn, have you met as an audit committee? Have you looked over this? Are you content to recommend that we approve?
Yeah, so obviously we had the audit committee today at 1 o'clock. We had a session at 12 with the auditor separately for us to ask any questions, which was a really good and thorough session. So we were all content at 1 PM at the audit committee to approve the audited accounts.
Excellent, thank you for that, and if we can minute that, just thank you to you, the audit committee, for doing that on our behalf. Craig.
Okay, thank you to yourself. The final part is just as it says here, just for the IGB to approve the Chair, Chief Officer and the Chief Finance Officer to accept and sign the final accounts. And then secondly, to consider the letter of representation contained within Appendix 1 and approve the signing by myself for this.
Thank you, Craig. So before we do that, are there any questions or comments at this point we need to direct to Craig or the auditors for the position to decide? I'm not seeing any. Okay, in that case, would it be simpler to have an approver and a seconder? Is that the easiest way of doing it? Could I have someone put up to approve? Becky, thank you, Becky. And empty second as well in terms of recommendation. Seen that from Lynn, excellent. And same with Gio as well. Okay, so I'm not seeing any dissenting voices. So I think we are good to then go to take through recommendations. Excellent. And can I just say, just on behalf of myself as chair of the committee, the work that Craig and the team have done on this, very much appreciate all the effort that goes into this. Having been on that side of the fence as well, I know there's a lot of blood, sweat and tears and late nights to get us to the point. So to have a clean audit report as this, such as this, to get us to this point now, I'm absolutely delighted as chair. So just to say thank you for all the hard work and efforts for you and the team. Thank you. Okay, colleagues, in that case, if we then move on to agenda item number 7, Craig, I believe you're up again. This is a financial monitoring report for period 5, 2025-2026.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, and through yourself, Chair. This is a standard finance paper that we bring forward to every IJB, and it covers a number of main areas. It covers a period 5 projection for the 25-26 outturn, capital position, and our reserves position. The paper gives an update against the progress against our savings targets to date also. So the main one is, as at period 5, we're currently projecting an underspend of £46,000 for the combined IJB budget. Social care is projecting an overspend of £672,000. The health side of the budget is projecting an underspend of £718,000. Obviously, by year end, we will transfer any underspends to reserves if required to bring its position back to break even. There are a number of over and underspends within the overall budget, and as I usually do, I'm just going to briefly highlight them. Starting with the social care side of the budget, the main driver for the total overspend is due to the Children and Families budget, projecting a £3.453 million overspend, and this is mainly due to residential placements and child respite overspends at period 5. This forms part of the overall Children and Families redesign that Margaret and the team is currently taking forward. An additional funding we've had from Inverclyde Council as part of the budget process. It's helped and will help with this review. We also have the use of the non-recurring pension monies to assist with the smoothing of this particular pressure, and we're using this to help us with the overall budget. We understand that this will come to an end at the end of this financial year, and we've factored this into our budget process later on today's agenda. This is also partially offset by underspends in the older person's budget. However, you'll notice that the Children and Families overspend has reduced from last year, but the adult services, so has the adult underspend as well. This is mainly due to transitions cases moving from children to adults and from one budget to another. The other factor contributing to the overspend is the work that's still going on to deliver the new voluntary release target, as highlighted in the savings sections of the report. This still needs to be achieved, and as an SMT, we're working on that in the next week or so, and we will bring this forward as part of the IJB additional meeting that we have in December to discuss that further. Looking at the health side of the budget, this is underspent. This is mainly due to vacancies across a number of the departments, and this is partially offset by overspends in prescribing. The next section highlights the HSCP's progress to date in the achievement of its in-year savings, and as you can see, we've already made good progress the delivery of our savings, and it's only the £400,000 that I briefly spoke about there that still needs to be concluded, and as I said, we're working on that as we speak. Section 7 shows our overall earmarked reserves, and this shows that we currently started the year with 17.144 million, and we expect to finish the year with 12.091 million based on our current projections. Our total general and smoothing reserves is €5.666 million and represents 2.44% of our total funding, which falls within our recommendations of between 2% and 4%. Finally, moving on to the capital section, section 9 shows the current capital position, and the main areas that we're looking at. The community hub capital project has already started, and this section highlights what we expect to do on this. As is always, it's a fairly comprehensive report, but happy to take any comments or questions anyone might have.
Craig, thank you very much for that. I shall open up any questions or comments for Craig at this point. I'm not seeing any. In that case, Craig, just to say thank you very much for this report. Just record that I am delighted that we are currently projecting a surplus of £46,000. Hopefully that will go in the right direction as well once we come to the 31st of March. This is a good position to be in. I think it reflects a really structured and comprehensive approach in terms of savings we try to make, of taking account of the fact we still need to deliver service and make sure we get the best value for money of the money we have as well. So that this is a good position to be in. And then what we can do is once we come on to the budget discussion later in this meeting, we can have a more kind of reflecting and looking forward to see the position we're going to be in. We obviously shared that already as part of the development session last week, but I'm conscious that not everyone was there in attendance, so some will be being used. Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate that. In that case, if we then move on to agenda item number 8, just going back, this partially discussed by the comments that Becky made, the questions she raised earlier at the start of the meeting, closure of Inverclyde Centre transition planning. Maxine, do you want to just speak to this?
Yeah, just following on from the theme of efficiency savings, I'm about to give you all 15 minutes back of your time on the basis that I do sincerely apologise. The report that I had altered does not seem to be the one that's been uploaded, so I had changed the report to suggest it was for noting and had added a line in there that the transition plan in detail will come back in January. So I do apologise that that isn't the one that's been uploaded, and we will bring it back.
Maxine, thank you for that. As chair, I have no issues with that. These things happen, so I'm perfectly content for us to actually take that in January as well. Colleagues in agreement, is that acceptable to us all? I'm seeing nodding. Excellent. Okay, thank you for giving us 15 minutes back, Maxine.
You're welcome.
We'll take the 15 minutes away come January. Thank you. Okay, and in that case, if we move on to items for noting and routine discussions, item number 9 is progress of the primary care improvement plan. Would this be yourself, Katrina, or would this be me? Oh, it's Alan. Oh, geez, Alan.
No problem. Thanks, Chair. Thank you. This paper is promoting the IGIB in terms of the progress of the primary care improvement plan. Members will remember at the last meeting, the Director of Primary Care came down and gave a paper on the primary care strategy. This paper updates the IGIB on the delivery and impact of the primary care improvement plan throughout 2025 and highlights the transformations that is undertaken, continues to be undertaken across primary care services with the direction of allowing the GP practices to carry out their general medical expert role. We've seen significant progress in the integrating of multidisciplinary teams, pharmacy, nursing, advanced nursing, physiotherapy and community link workers. The Primary Care Improvement Fund has enabled innovation across our workforce, developing it, certainly strengthening our recruitment and retention, and also looking at premises improvement. Currently, we have 56.23 full-time equivalent colleagues who contribute to the primary care delivery in Inverclyde. The IGIB remember that Inverclyde was an early adopter of the multidisciplinary model, which was set out within the GP contract under the Memorandum of Understanding. And that is very much focused on some key areas. The service areas that we're focused on were the vaccination transformation programme, and we've seen considerable success there, the shift of vaccination workload traditionally from the GP surgery to our HSCP teams, which has allowed us to develop our community-based delivery model, which is we're seeing dividends and a high uptake in rates. I think that's really important at the moment when we see currently a high incidence in flu, within our community. So again, it's about bringing our vaccinations to the community now, and we've seen a success in that. Colleagues in pharmacy and pharmacotherapy, that's allowed us to expand our pharmacy teams to look at medicine management, standardising prescription, improving quality of prescribing, and also making the best use of our resources in terms of cost efficiency. Our community treatment and care centres, CTAC, we've seen a large increase in the use of our CTAC, and we've got one of the busiest CTAC centres across GG&C. That's seen the transfer of minor injuries and chronic disease management and monitoring to our community setting, and we're now seeing quite significant increase in referrals to that service, which is really positive. We've also seen our community link workers who are linked with the practices supporting social, financial and mental health referral issues. That's resulted in over 6,600 contacts this year. We've seen our advanced nurse practitioner model grow, and we've been able to stabilise recruitment and retention within the advanced nurse practitioner model. And again, that supports directly supporting our GP practices and our community. We've also seen our advanced physiotherapy model continue to show its benefit across the limited practices that supports, and that gives provision of musculoskeletal care to our community. Very importantly, we've seen very positive community engagement in terms of helping to inform the public about primary care services, how to engage in primary care services, and also which multi-professional to actually engage with to support them. And we've seen that engagement through various forms of branding, surveys, events, and our digital campaigns, which have seen very good feedback on. We're very, very cognizant of the primary care improvement plan also supports an inclusive, resilient community. It aligns itself with the HSP strategic priorities in terms of focusing on reducing health inequalities and supporting vulnerable groups. In conclusion, the primary care improvement plan has enabled us a very positive shift towards a sustainable, multidisciplinary primary care team and model, and we continue to engage with our community and ensure that we're innovatively using the capacity and investment we have to maintain progress in this and to meet future health challenges. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Alan. Colleagues, any questions or comments? Francesca.
Thanks very much, Jim. Thanks, Alan, for that report. I think just under vaccinations you've got in the winter 25-26 programme, you've suggested bringing back a full account of vaccinations after the winter programme. So I think it was good to say that that would be helpful. And I see you're also, there's a point in there about the transfer of vaccinations has meant a GP workload shift. How would we know that, or how would we see that, in terms of sort of outcomes and results? Does that mean people will find it easier to get a GP appointment in Inverclyde, for example, or are there other ways we'll see that change happening? Thanks.
Thank you, yourself, Chair. Just the first point, more than happy to bring, once we get our kind of figures for this year, more than happy to bring an update to the IGIB about our vaccination, and that will also allow us to be able to focus on areas that perhaps we haven't seen so strong vaccination in some groups, so we can maybe some focus our resources there. In terms of the focus on the workload, it's about giving the GPs themselves to act in a general medical expert role, so be able to spend more time with more complex cases or with patients within the community. So it's, whilst it moves some of the workload away from the GPs in terms of us absorbing it in other ways, but allows them to focus their skills more directly with patients, and with that, hopefully better outcomes for the patients and the patient themselves, maybe not having future down the line issues posing an issue appearing later in the day. So it allows them to spend time making sure the proper prescriptions are there, prescribing, and also proper referral routes are able to be focused on. So it's about that quality of time with the patient.
Thanks very much. And do you think there's a way to see that quantified, or is it just a sort of overall sense that we'll get at this stage?
I think that's something that we can do as we get the kind of we can do the raw data or number of visits, but it's getting beneath that. It's about looking at the specific conditions that the GPs are able to focus on. We know that in Inverclyde we have issues around respiratory conditions, especially at this time of year. So we would hope to see that that data shows that they're able to focus more time on specific cohorts of patients and support them. So certainly working with our public health colleagues, we can look at that data and perhaps bring that into a future report for the IGB.
Thanks. Thanks for that, Alan. Thanks, Francesca. That's a very good point in terms of certainly when it comes to population health improvement. Sort of PRISM actually demonstrating that our interventions actually make a difference, what that difference is, and have the data support that is absolutely key. So your point is very well made. I will move on to Gio.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Alan, for the report. Just a quick question on 3.12, the CTAC services. Just noticing the large number of referrals that were serviced. Just, is there any lessons learned from it, positive, negative? Is that how did the team cope? What did we have to do differently, and so forth? Did we expect it, and so forth?
Thank you again. As our CTAC services expand, we're certainly seeing that it's allowing us certainly the skills of the staff that work within CTAC, the nurses, able to sort of very much utilise their skills in disease, chronic disease management, and again allows that sort of broader approach to healthcare. We're very much building on the expertise of our colleagues within CTAC, but also the services we're providing in there, in terms of blood pressure monitoring, wound management, again, bringing that back into the community and hopefully avoiding multiple visits to services. I don't know if my colleague Laura next to me wants to kind of come in on that.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. I think recently we've had several stories come through in Care Opinion for really fantastic patient experience that's come through, particularly in relation to diabetes, where the individuals that have sent us the feedback are talking about the fact that they were able to spend quite a lot of time with the nurses and really focus on the changes in their medication and that sort of thing. So I think we are seeing really good results from all of that, and just that ability of these practitioners to spend more time than maybe other GP colleagues might have the time to spend with them is definitely getting us some good feedback, and I think we're seeing some good things.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gio. Becky.
Thank you. I just want to say that this is a great report, and thank you. Lots of information in there and lots of work happening. So thank you so much. And I know I mentioned before I was a bit concerned we wouldn't be able to recruit our AMPs. So we have done. So well done. And it's great to see that we'll be up to full capacity and even those coming out of training by the start of next year, because I think they're an excellent resource for us. So thanks.
Thanks, Becky. I think it's fair to say this report has been very well received, colleagues. From my own perspective, I have to say that when I see the success of the work we're experiencing in terms of CTAC, community health workers as well, and diverting patients away from primary care and also acute presenting A&E, this feels like very much the right direction of travel. So just reflecting back on Francesca's point, if we can see the evidence of what this impact is having, that will give us a stronger case in terms of potentially looking for additional funding from SG just going forward. That's something to reflect upon. Thank you for that, colleagues.
David, you don't look to this.
Sorry, Robert, I've wanted to get to get to know me. I apologise.
No, I just get the side of points made. But after the measure put in here, but how do you quantify the workload of the GP? How do you know, is any data come back saying this would be a big difference? We don't do anymore because these new measures. And obviously now, when the First Minister has announced it, we walk in, GP appointments start quite soon. Has there been any talk about if anyone's coming to Inverclyde, or we any discussion on where these walk-in appointments are going to take place?
Sorry, Robert, I cannot speak to that. Executive colleagues?
Robert, it's very early days, and what we don't want to do is to undo things that are working really, really well in Inverclyde. I sometimes worry about new initiatives and how that it kind of knocks us off, because we are actually doing well in that space around the CTAC. And You know, we know that not everyone needs to see a GP, you know, and we see, but yeah, the outcomes that we're getting through care opinion are showing that it's actually the time that's been spent with the patient that's probably of the most benefit to the patient. Explain how they manage their condition, and that's what people are getting out of it. Certainly, for every care opinion that comes through the system, it comes directly to me. So I'm able to see it, so I can see the difference about the relationships and helping people to self-manage. So we will wait and see what that actually means in terms of walk-in GP clinics, and we would have to do that assessment around whether it was right for Inverclyde from there.
Can you say, you know, going on through the pandemic when people had to phone up the GP, and the first person would be as acceptance, go to it through a series of questions before appointing to the right person. Now, I hope we'll learn from there. And I've seen there is a raft of measures in here, and I hope they'll make a difference. But you'd like to see some sort of data on the difference they are making. There are the report here. I would say a GP say, well, I've got my workload down for 10%, but I don't need to do X, Y, and Z between 8 o'clock and 10 in the morning. That would be a better, where you'd have a better understanding what help it has been through. There are just the report saying, we've done this, we've done that, you know. And I don't know if that's possible or even the data available, but it would be interesting to know how much of a difference it has made to their workload.
Thanks, Robert. And I think just reflecting on that's a good point, very well made. Fundamentally, reflecting on outcomes for patients, because ultimately that's what we are here to achieve, is to achieve the best possible outcome for patients and what that looks like. So I think colleagues, you have a sort of clear steer from the committee here in terms of let's see what the evidence base we have built up is in terms of the actual direct impact of this. I think we as a committee would very much welcome that. You see nodding around the room. Robert, if I ignore you again, feel free to throw something at me, because obviously I'm blind spot to you today and it's not me being rude, so apologies for that.
To you, Chair.
Gio, have you got a legacy hand?
Yes, is legacy. I thought it will automatically come out.
Thanks, Gio. Okay, colleagues, that was an excellent discussion. If we then move on to agenda item number 10, this is a proposed approach to the 26-27 IJB budget, and Craig, you're up.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, for yourself. This is the budget approach paper that we bring forward for November in advance of the budget settlement coming out in January. The purpose of this paper is to advise the IJB of our current budget approach to next year's budget and the potential implications for the years beyond that. This paper looks at identifying the budget gap for the next 2 years. The starting point for us is a 5-year financial plan that came to the IJB as part of the budget setting paper in March. This paper uses that as a starting point for the current budget gap of £7 million over the next 2 years. This gap was created mainly from a few pressures. These are the loss of the non-recurring pension monies, which is helping with our overall children and family pressures. The requirement for the HSCP to cover the first 3% of the social care pay award, and the requirement to fund potential demographic pressures. This does not factor in any additional funding that may or may not come out as part of the budget settlement in January. This is simply to highlight the extent of the pressures we know about and the level of savings we need to plan for. The HSCP senior management have already been working on a range of savings initiatives, which we'll discuss with the IJB and our partners on the Council and the Health Board. We're also likely to be using a number of smoothing reserves to help us manage this progression over the next few years. I'll set up a further budget development session in late January, early February, where we'll go into more detail on the savings proposals the officers recommend. At that point, we will know the full extent of the savings we need to make, and it's my intention to try and set a multi-year budget, but I will know the likelihood of this in February. This is a similar position currently being dealt with across all IJBs. I'm also in regular contact with the Council, as I know they're aiming to also set a 2-year rolling budget. As most people will be aware we had the IGB development session the other day, and we will continue on the good work that we've already done for that, and we'll bring that forward and hope to have a development section, as I've said, late January, early February, where we'll have more of the detail that we can present at that point. By that point, obviously, the budget will be out there in the public domain from Scottish Government, and we'll factor that into it as well. As always, happy to take any comments or questions anyone might have.
Thank you for that, Craig. Just from my perspective, obviously, having had sight of this in terms of development section and knowing that you're adopting a similar approach to we've done in previous years, how effective that has been. Just reflecting on that and giving us as members the opportunity to interrogate that with a fine-tooth comb, then very much welcome those discussions as part of the development session. I think it's excellent that officers are actually in the exec team in a position at this point in November we have potential for both to consider as a board. So it's good to be in this position already. So I very much welcome those discussions in January. That said, do we have any questions or comments? And I'm looking at your mic's not on, Robert, so I know I'm okay at the moment.
Oh, that's fine, and that's
Colleagues, do we have any questions or comments for Craig at this point? We can tend to wait till January for the development session. I can go into this in a lot more detail. No? Okay, in that case, thank you very much for that, Craig. We will move on to agenda item number 11, Strategic Partnership Plan, 6-month update. And Jonathan, I believe it's yourself who's going to speak to this.
Thank you very much, Chair. For yourself, I'll just provide a brief introduction. As members know, we have our 3-year strategic partnership plan in place from 2024 to 2027, and we committed to provide 6 monthly updates to IGB members. So the paper within your packs today covers the last 6-month period from April to September 2025 and captures the progress, 32 strategic actions against our 4 strategic priorities. I'm just going to pass over to my colleague Scott Bryan, Service Manager, to more detail. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, as mentioned, this is our recent 6-monthly report to the IGP on our strategic partnership plan. So it covers all our strategic actions for the period from April 2025 to September 2025. And it's highlighted that the report provides a range of progress against all partnership actions. So the report provides a sort of in-depth report against all of our strategic actions within the strategic partnership plan. I think it's quite important to highlight that the actions that we're providing come through a range of discussions through our priority groups. So these are groups that are consistent of a range of staff and colleagues across the social care partnership, coming together to have a robust conversation around what our activity looks like and around how we're actually effectively meeting our strategic action plan. So through that, we have a robust conversation that gives a real firm update in terms of what's happening against the strategic partnership plan. I won't go through the book because it's quite lengthy, but I'll just maybe highlight some key highlights from it. So in terms of providing helpful things that we've experienced over the past 6 months, is we've been very critical to support our families and children and young people, so through the implementation of our central safety work. There's a little progress in looking at our integrated front door, so looking at how we are managing our front door services to ensure that people can access HSCP services a lot more effectively. Again, for mental health wellbeing and recovery priority, we have positive work around supporting people to self-manage their conditions, so looking at people supporting them in the community with long-term conditions to self-manage effectively. We've got a little bit cleaning in that vein. Also done a range of test change for integrated between alcohol and drug recovery services and mental health services. And that test change will be concluding in November, and I'm sure we'll be able to go back to IGB on that and how that piece of what will be progressing. In terms of our inclusive, safe, resilient communities, so we're supporting more children who are looked after to remain in Inverclyde. We'll do that through supporting our foster cares and strengthening that aspect of our provision for care for young people. And against the strengthening families and carers priority, we're looking at we are progressing our care strategy with our colleagues within carers gateway. They're progressing through strong engagement with local carers and local carers, and that strategy will be published soon and brought back to IGB for meeting. And in terms of our families who have experience in the justice system, Families outside work is now proposed with those families to ensure they've got a robust suite of supports to make sure that they are effectively supported through that experience as they support their family members within the justice system. So overall, looking at all that, of all our 32 actions, all 32 are set agreement on track. So our our strategic plan is still on track for delivery for 2027. So any questions, happy to take them.
Thank you, Scott. Colleagues, any questions? Francesca?
Thanks, Chair. It's really just a comment. It's, you know, so much in that report and great to get that update every 6 months, you know, under the 4 priorities, and hearing that, you know, I think you're saying that almost everything is on track.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been lucky enough to visit some of the parts of the work that are in there and seeing about, you know, for example, the Inverclyde play, even about children's and families work. So it's just a really big thanks to everyone who's involved to making all that happen. And I think it's just, when you look at that report, sort of against the context of the previous agenda item, where we're saying, you know, the IJB, because of the budget as it is, may have to consider potential reductions. It's just not at all, you know, the position that any of us want to be in. You then see that work that's detailed there and so much great work going on. Just, you know, it's quite stark to think that, but just loads of really, really important pieces of work going on all across Inverclyde. So thanks for that happening.
Thank you, Francesca. I very much echo those comments. To actually get this report and see all 32 of our strategic ambitions on track is no small achievement, and every single element of what is every single work stream that's contained within this has the potential to make a real positive difference in the lives of children and families within Inverclyde. So this is a very much a good news story, so I very much welcome this as chair. My only slight challenge would be, we're on track for 32. When it comes to looking at this again in the future, should we consider being even more ambitious in terms of what we want to do? That's not, I'm not looking for an answer right now, but just something to reflect on. It's like, we're doing great so far, could we do better?
So I think we need to consider next when the reporting will have a link to the strategic update with the also outcomes framework. So that also gives that bit more greater detail in terms of who we're actually progressing towards our strategic partnership plan. So that's almost finalised in terms of its development. We use to into this in future.
So why the outcome framework is really, really important. Whilst it should reflect us on target, it will give you the variations of on target. So it will allow you to see where we started from in terms of baseline and where we actually are and where we need to go. And why that's really important is that there's always a danger with strategic plans that come 27. We decide, oh, let's have a new strategic plan, and yet we haven't consolidated the actions that we've actually put in place that were really well considered by our communities and our stakeholders. So that would be my plea around the outcome framework, that it will give us a direction of where we're doing stronger, but where we need to be more ambitious.
Thank you, Kate, for that. Again, just to reflect, if we can formally note all the excellent, all the work that has gone into this, getting us to this point. So, more power to you available. Thank you so much. Okay, colleagues, in that case, I'm not seeing any questions. If we move on to item number 12, this is Chief Social Work Annual Report 2024-2025. Jonathan, this.
Thank you very much, and for yourself, Chair. I'm pleased to present the annual Chief Social Work Officer report to our JB member today, which provides an important overview of social work and social care activity in Inverclyde over 2024-25. Members will have the opportunity to attend a briefing session last week, and elected members from Inverclyde Council have also seen a detailed presentation. The role of the Chief Social Work Officer is to provide strategic and professional leadership in the delivery of social work services within a framework of statutory duties and powers to meet best value professional standards. As a registered and qualified profession, social workers have a unique, challenging and a vital role to protect the most vulnerable people in their communities, to work within multiple practice standards and an increasingly complex legislative environment. To summarise, the full range of social work and social care activity over the years is always a challenge. However, it has again been characterised by strong relationships, meaningful engagement with people in our communities and our key partners. And this remains fundamental to how services are developed and delivered within the context of ongoing high demand and complexity, alongside capacity challenges and significant financial pressures. Governance arrangements, resources and workforce matters are also included within the report, as well as considering future challenges and opportunities both locally and nationally. The report also acknowledges the significant commitment and dedication of my social work and social care colleagues, who along with our health colleagues continue to make a real difference to the communities of Inverclyde. So, Chair, members are asked to note the report, which has been submitted to the Chief Social Work Advisor to the Scottish Government, and from that it will form part of a national overview of some of the reports from other areas in due course. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jonathan. Colleagues, any questions for Jonathan? Francesca.
Thanks, Chair. Just a comment, and it's something that I've said before. As you say, some of us have been able to see and hear and read this report previously, but I think it's just when Jonathan's given that report and, just, a quick word about the budget pressures and about the capacity challenges that are there as the backdrop to all the work that's going on. It was just again to say a thanks to all the staff very much on the front line, making Inverclyde keep going and tick over and supporting families and supporting people with additional vulnerabilities in our communities. So just a big thanks to everybody who's been involved in that over the past year.
Thanks, Francesca. Colleagues, any other questions or comments for Jonathan? I am not seeing anything. I absolutely echo those comments that Francesca's made. I think we have a very specific challenges in Inverclyde in terms of the impact of deprivation and poverty on the people we serve. It's what I take particular assurance from is not just in terms of the work that is going on, but the focus of that work as well in terms of when it comes to children in our community, trying to keep them within their communities as opposed to moving them out with and empowering families and giving them the agency to support them as well is really important, because we know that we get better outcomes when we can keep kids in the community. So just to say, as Francesca said, this is a really good what we are doing, the work that's ongoing and the outcomes that we're delivering as well. We know that challenge is going to get harder in terms of the cost of living crisis. But just to say, we very much welcome this report and what we're achieving so far. We don't think we're not resting on the laurels, absolutely not. I think that it would be unfair to do that, but it's good to see the progress that we're making along with it. Thank you, Jonathan. In that case, if we can then, after that, move on to the Chief Officer's report. And Kate, if you can speak to that, please.
So it's got a pretty full agenda here. So the three areas that we would want to highlight are a delayed discharge position, which is a standing item within the Chief Officer's report, and our OPAT service. So I might ask colleagues to come in if there's any difficult questions, and our COPD remote patient monitoring. But I'd like to start with our delayed discharge positions. In total, we still do well, but we have a bit more challenge in the system at this moment in time around the availability of care homes, which we will pick up in the governance section in the private agenda, and Arlene and others will attempt to address that. But there needs to be some recognition that even for the people coming out and coming back home to live in the community, that there's a higher level of complexity in the level of the support needs, but we're still doing well in that area. Some of the good news over this period is that AWI for us seemed to be much higher than what we had normally experienced, but across the system that we're seeing much more AWI delayed discharges. But the service manager for social work, mental health, did a deep dive, and we were able to see that over this month period that we've seen a 25% reduction in AWIs from previous months, and that's had a 27% reduction in bed days lost. So the data is there to support that. Does anyone want to ask me anything about that? Are you happy to move on? So the next bit is just to talk about OPAT, that we launched the pilot around outpatient parenteral antimyotropal therapy service running from September 2025 to March 2026. So we're probably only 6 weeks within this pilot, and we'll probably bring back a more detailed report about the impact at the end of the pilot. But the most important thing is focusing on supporting patients already in our OPAT pathways, particularly those who are frail or housebound, through community-based blood monitoring, wound care, and line and various other interventions. And phase 1 doesn't involve the administration of antibiotics, but enhances support for patients receiving OPAT treatment, and it will be based at Port Glasgow Health Centre. So I don't know if Laura wants to say any more about this.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. Apologies, I'd forgotten there was a date in here about this, because the pilot it's been officially put on hold due to a lack of funding. However, we have still said that because of the benefits for us, that we would still absolutely see any patients that would make a difference. So we haven't had anyone through it yet, and we've just been working up today. Could we do anything for the part of the system reset? Because we are ready to go with this, and it would absolutely make a difference to our patients. But yeah, I say apologies, I'd forgotten that the date was on there. So hopefully through system reset we'll be able to do it, but we have said if there's anyone urgent we would take them, and as yet there hasn't been. The numbers are tiny, but the thing about this is that when they do start to come through, even though it will only be a handful of patients, we will be able to make a big difference, and that's why we've said that we would still be happy to give it a trial. So as yet we wouldn't have anything to tell you, but it's coming.
Will this be aligned to the Flow Navigation Plus?
It is part of all that interface work, yeah.
Okay, so just the next bit, unless we've decided that we're not doing this.
No, do you want me to carry on with
Okay,
that
I'll
bit?
hand it over to you.
Sorry, Kate, just for the benefit of everyone in the room and online, just say what Flow Navigation Plus is. I notice also Becky has her hand up as well.
So, Flow Navigation Plus is still getting developed as a concept, but it is a triage system, an enhanced professional to professional triage system that avoids hospital admission. So that in the main is, and that is actually a very positive development within GGNC, and there's various timelines that are being undertaken to make it fit to what that strategic and that health analysis is needed to stop hospital admission. So I don't know if you want to come in now, Laura.
Yeah, so I think the next bit actually it ties in beautifully. So we've actually been trailblazers in terms of starting to use some of the technology that's going to be part of Flow Navigation and virtual wards. And as we've explained here with the COPD patient monitoring that we've been rolling out. So we've had this the system has been available to us, but we didn't have a long-term conditions nurse in place to actually support it. And since we've got that post in place, we've really started to see quite a difference in terms of this work. And you'll see here what we particularly wanted to flag to the IJB was that for the initial 13 individuals that went through and who've been using this technology, which just means that they're able to take some of their own observations and things at home, and they've got antibiotics at home, and we can advise them when to take those. We've seen a 50% reduction in A&E attendances, a 58% reduction in admissions, and a 40% reduction in bed days. And we've got that bit of feedback included in the report as well, in terms of what a difference that's made to patients' lives. You know, when you start talking about somebody who's been able to use this remote monitoring, who was in and out of hospital regularly and now hasn't been in for a year, I just think that's something that's really worth celebrating. The data that we measure, we do a 6-month period, 3 months before they start, 3 months after. So we've only got the one block of data, but what we can see so far is that it's, you know, this work's really carrying on well, and having that nurse embedded in our team is making a difference. And as you quite rightly say, this is a lot of the virtual work and monitoring as part of the new system moves, but I think we should be proud of the fact we've been ahead of the game on this one.
Thank you, Laura. Just reflect on the 40% reduction in bed days. That's huge.
Yeah.
Can I bring in Becky at this point? Becky?
Hi, thank you. Yeah, totally agree, Laura. That's fantastic. And I thought lots of things Kate brought in the report are fantastic, and I was actually really excited about the OPAT pilot. So I just wanted to clarify there. So it's because then you said you might have a trial. So just to clarify, so you're saying it's not going ahead, and you said about lack of funding. And where is that? Or where was the blockage there, I suppose?
So Becky, this is part of the OPAT work that's board wide. So it's working with the board wide team in relation to that. And then the idea was that it would be rolled out wider to the particular West Dun, ourselves, East Dun, that hadn't particularly seen the benefits of the services because they were more centralised around the larger hospitals. So what our aim was to be able to support people to stop them having to go in and out of the acute trust to have bloods and things taken. So that was stage 1. And then stage 2, we were hoping to start looking at some of our care home residents. But at the moment, we haven't been able to get any of the interface funding. So it is part of the interface work. It's on the interface plan. But we haven't managed to get any of that funding to support us locally. So what we'd agreed with the actual acute OPAT team was if there was anybody that was really urgent, that we would, if we had the capacity, take them and support them while we're waiting to get the funding sorted. And as part of the system reset that starts on Thursday, we've also again said if there was anybody, we would be keen, and we know that we'd get overtime funding for that while the reset's going. We're so desperate to prove that we can make this work, and I say we are set up and ready for it. So hopefully we'll be able to get that money soon. The idea from the board was that we'd get some of the slippage monies from Interface, but I say they've not been made available as yet to us. But it's not a no, we're just waiting for those monies. Is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you.
I've not given you too much detail, but...
No, that's helpful, thank you.
Thanks, Betty. Chris, your hand's up.
Good afternoon. I was just ready to give a bit more of an update on some aspects of OPAT. I mean, we do have OPAT available within acute up in IRH through a lot of our ambulatory units, particularly through the medical ambulatory units. However, I suppose the clue's in the name in that you have to be quite ambulatory in order to attend those. I think this, the aspects where trying to support the service kind of going more into the community and supporting people at home or in nursing homes is massively welcome from an acute perspective. I think the Flow Navigation Centre is potentially quite exciting. We're working really hard at the moment to try and populate the Flow Navigation Centre with experts. So if somebody's phoning in with a respiratory issue or a cardiology issue, then that professional can speak to a consultant cardiologist or respiratory consultant, looking at the two kind of main acute specialties, and then they can be directed to the appropriate ambulatory pathway or an urgent clinic appointment rather than referring to the front door for an admission. So it has potential kind of massive impact on just how we run things. But I think everybody certainly buys into the idea of I suppose avoiding that admission, but making sure that you're going to get seen quickly.
Thank you, Chris. That's helpful context. Just following up in terms of the trial and the funding, is that just a temporary halt on that, or when do you anticipate that we actually be able to go ahead? Do we have a timeline for that?
So as I understand it, it's a temporary halt. The next meeting and updates due next week, but we're getting sort of updates every couple of weeks. So yeah, we are hopeful. I say it's all dependent on the base slippage.
Thank you very much for that. Colleagues, are we content to accept this paper? Obviously some very good work going on here. Thank you very much for that. Great to get that context and where we are, the direction of travel as well. Okay, moving on to... Oh, Gio, apologies, I didn't see you there.
No,
I'm obviously having a terrible day for seeing hands.
No worries. Thank you, Chair. I was, first of all, really, when you read a comment that says the patient, says it makes me feel safe, kind of reminds all of us what is about, what we are all about. I was just wondering about, so we hear about the results of the, if you like, pilot of 13 individuals. I'm curious about what is the potential for scaling up, you know, and what are the time, you know, if there is any timeline or possibility for scaling up, because, you know, the results that are presented in this report are really, really encouraging. And so just curious about next steps.
So yeah, in terms of that, Gio, absolutely, that will be the plan to scale up. The company itself are changing providers, are changing their software at the moment, so we're just waiting for that, but we do have more patients on this. I think the conversation for us in Inverclyde will also be how does this fit in with FNC Plus, because it's a different company that the board are using, and obviously we won't want to lose what we've already done, so it'll be how we jigsaw those two things together. But yeah, we've got the long-term conditions nurse now, and we would be really keen to keep growing this, absolutely. Why wouldn't we when we're seeing results like this?
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Gio, and thank you, Laura. If we can, I think we are there. In that case, we can move on to the next agenda item. That's the Inverclyde IJB Audit Committee minutes. And you're going to speak to this? No. Oh. Lynn, apologies, Lynn. Are you speaking to the minutes? Are you content that these are an accurate representation of the previous meeting?
Yeah, sorry, my mute was stuck there. Yeah, I'm happy with that to be an accurate minute.
Do we have any questions or comments on this? I suspect probably not. I'm not seeing any. Okay, in that case, thank you, Lynn, for that. Now we move on to, I believe, the private section of the meeting. So if you just clear the room of public, unfortunately. Sorry, Paul. Always fine. But thank you for attending.